Welcome back to this week's episode. I'm really excited to welcome you to a wonderful woman who is creating massive change in this world, and I'm super honored to have her as a guest on the show today. Welcome, Eugenia Oganova. She is a business strategist and marketing energetics coach with 2 decades of experience moving this work out into the world, a clairvoyant transcension mentor, renowned internationally, and a self-made millionaire. And you've been featured on Fox, NBC, CBS, USA Today, and Brainz magazine in over 100 publications, sharing all of your wisdom. You love to help spiritual coaches create soul-led businesses that are leveraged and spacious, up-leveling to high-end business with building those masculine linear side energies with the strategy and the soul-led capacity for our passions. Welcome, Eugenia. I can't wait to dive into this conversation today. I'm so excited that you're here.
Oh, thank you, Michelle, for having me. I'm excited too.
Let's dive into the strategy and the energetics, especially in this conversation of entrepreneurship for coaches, for healers, for CEOs in their own businesses, really wanting to take their business to the next level. I know starting off, there were so many things to learn in my own business, beginning to get to the part where money was flowing in and I was starting to have success. There's equally another level of that learning from that success up to 100K and beyond. And that's kind of the sweet spot where I want to bring the conversation in today. What do you find that requires of that CEO in mastering their emotions, the empowerment that it really is takes to build that body for that next level of growth in business, that next level of wealth? What do you
Yeah, I think that this is one of those spots in business where you got comfortable enough being able to do what you've learned to do, and your hustle is working and you're generating money. And now it's almost like, oh, now I have to step out of the comfort zone again. But yeah, we actually do in order to grow to the next level, because everything we want is on the other side of where we already are. So to get there, we do have to stretch through that uncomfortable sort of territory. And that discomfort, I think, is translated in people's experiences differently. Some see it as frustration, some see it as anxiety, some see it as just pure fear, fear of exposure, fear of visibility, fear of actually getting successful. Which is like the other side of the same fear of failure. So there are all these fears that show up. What they trigger is usually, at least in my experience, conditioned, programmed responses that we already carry. So when we come into this lifetime, we come in sort of like with two suitcases. One is all our gifts and this awesomeness that we bring in, and another one are our lessons and our karmic patterns and things that we need to clean up. Once we actually living our life, so the baby going through like, their teenage years eventually and into adulthood, we get conditioned and imprinted by the family, by society, by school, by religion, by whatever else that we're in. So energetically, these are morphogenic fields that have influence on us. And usually when we get to like our 20s, this is where the person is meant to start shedding all this stuff. Some do it a little earlier, some do it later when they maybe have their first child, and some even later. But this is kind of the time where you need to start figuring out what is me and what's not me. Like, what is it that expectations of other people? What is it that I was told I cannot do, but actually I can? This is where your inner badass magic's supposed to show up and kind of have audacity to step up. That's what happens when we expand to every new level of business. Because even starting a business as an entrepreneur, that's already sort of outside of traditional social template for business. That's already takes something, takes guts, takes some grit to do it, and definitely follow through and capacity for aligned action. But at the beginning, a lot of it is hustle. It's pushing, it's trying this way and that way. There's a lot of pressure. When you get too close to 100K, you kind of realize that this hustle is not scalable. So there is no more like, oh, how can I work harder? Doing the same thing more is not an option anymore. And the ones who try end up in burnout. That's where the body just gives out because it says, okay, we were doing this for a while, kind of like a short run forward. And in business, yes, you should be able to hustle for a sprint, but not a marathon.
Right.
So when you start to do this continuously, that's where internally, all the questions show up like, am I even meant for this? What is going on? Like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do it? And it's like a doubt on self-worth, when actually it's an opportunity to figure out what is that worth been built that's not you. So this is kind of like closing the loop of what I was saying with conditioning and imprinting, that when we get uncomfortable, it's a good thing, because that thing is a challenge to what are your real values? What have you built yourself on? Because if you don't know that, then, you know, just trying business tactics and stuff, that's not gonna do it. Like, you need to kind of get internally, like, what matters to me? Like,
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody is very driven and very ambitious, and they're trying to get to the top, or whatever their version of the top is, and they get to 80,000, and they're working so hard, and now they almost at 100, they go past 100, and suddenly they don't want to do anything. And they're like, what's wrong with me? Why? This is all I wanted, and now I don't. Well, the reason for that in this case would be is the person drive was to prove something, and that their version, subconscious version of proving was, let's say, 100K mark. So once they did it, that's it. There's no more drive. So there's like, well, what do I do with the business? Do I even want the business? Who am I? Why am I doing the business? That's where you finally at the place of like, okay, good place to be. That's like where my clients come to me, like, okay, you're in a good place. This is where we're going to do some work to clean out things that are not you and find out what is really there that's driving. And the ones who left standing and actually go to millions are the ones who are driven usually by service, by some sort of a higher vision than just, I need to get away from poverty, or I need to prove my parents something, or my ex, or whatever it is. So that's that shifting point of internal readjustment of value system is what needs to happen within your psyche to get you to that next level, over that hump where everybody usually gets stuck.
Yeah, I love that, because as you were talking, there's so many times I could hear my clients say, but I feel like I've already healed that. I've already done that.
Oh
And
yeah.
entrepreneurship is the great revealer. Like, yes, and now you're here with all the great learnings and wisdom, and you're never done learning. And so what is it now? And I love that you said that, because so often we're operating off of our previous values, and now the values have grown like we've grown. And so it's a matter of getting really aligned with what's most important. And I love also that you said that moment where you feel like, what the heck, I don't want to do this anymore. It feels like the motivation, it's not fear, but it feels like the motivation pulls you into this pause. And I always think there's a beautiful sweet spot in that pivot. The pivot is here for you to see exactly what you're saying, this new revelation of the part of you that needs to birth forth to step into that next level of who you are. And it's not always comfortable, and it catches you off guard to where all of a sudden you're like, I wake up one day and going, I need to burn it all down and start over again. And that's not the case. It's just a matter of being with yourself through that pattern to realize more clearly what it is that you definitely want. At least that's my interpretation of it.
Yeah, and I would totally agree that a lot of times when people come to this place, the initial response is, I need to walk away, or I need to start something totally different because I'm not interested in what I'm doing. When usually it's more about figuring out what goes forward in your market positioning. So from the way that I work with my clients is, we base the market positioning on their sole expertise instead of their skills. And when that adjustment is made, that's where the shift can happen, because you have amassed a lot of skills through your lifetime, through different things you've done, and especially if the business was actually working and got you to a certain level financially. All those things are good skills and they should not be discarded. But if they have been forward, like that's what you've been promoting, that's the part that's now soured and doesn't feel right anymore. And that's true, because from that point on, to me, it's not even that the values are grown. I kind of see it like the values are always there, but we half of the time not really aware of the inner true values, because we're too busy with the externalized values that's been imposed on us and we accept it. So when we cleared up those external values, like I have to be polite, I have to be a good person, I have to be, and then all of this is dressed in a specific outfit. Like I've had many clients who show up with this, sort of a proper look and very boring marketing, and then we adjust things and suddenly this badass unicorn comes out that's like totally crazy awesome and attracts people to her, but it's like she wouldn't give herself permission to even be that because of the old values. So then what did she change? It's not really what she's doing, it's how she's doing it. So that's what I mean by adjusting to what is your soul expertise, which is this innate thing you came in with, not anything you had to learn in this lifetime. That's in a suitcase from the gift side. That's not from the lesson side. So the original something that we bring in, like a superpower, everybody has one, like there's nobody here without one. And some of us have many, then like much more than one, many more than one. So whatever those things are, when that comes forward, that adjusts the value system. And then instead of the negative, we focus on the positive, like the drive from the negative, like I want to get away from poverty. I want to get away from, what somebody thought of me. I want to prove somebody wrong and so on. And these are not bad things initially because they do put fire under your butt to get you moving. But then once you are moving, you can't keep using that as fire because at some point that wound actually gets sort of healed. And that's where we get to this place like, why am I feeling not good enough, even though I thought I healed it? And it's like, no, what you healed was the incorrect place where the drive began. The wound of the not good enough actually is still an issue from the standpoint of what fills that up. Because when anytime we have the not good enough internal issue, it's because we're looking for something external to somehow reflect to us that we are good enough. Like we're looking something outside of us to fill that up. That comes from like childhood when mommy, daddy didn't give us what we needed to reflect that love to us and whatever. So when we grow up, it twists into all sorts of stories in adulthood, but it's still initially that in its core, that somebody got to tell me I'm okay and then I'm okay. And the only true resolution to this is internal decision. That's really adulthood, when it's not anymore about somebody telling you. It's like they can all be telling you that you're horrible and you can say, no, I'm awesome. No, I'm the queen. No, I'm going to the top because I decided and I don't care what you're saying, including the voices in my own head. And
Right.
when we do that, that's where we fully step into our soul expertise and get to do the mission we're here for originally.
I love that. I was just in my group prior around 10 talking like a little snippet of Mastery Monday, and it literally was that moment of when you have everything that you've been aiming to have to go for and you find yourself in that space, now you get to accept that you're here and make new goals. And it's not even the physical goals, it's the I don't have to keep going backward. I've become that version of me in this moment, and now that next version wants to arrive. And there's a nuance, there's a subtlety that's in that when you don't have to keep going backwards to, and I think that's part of what you're saying. It's like there's no longer this proving, this driving, this thing that's over here. You've become the woman. Now you just got to step more fully into the next version and claim what that is. And do you feel like that's a piece of that leap over that 100,000 mark as well? Because that big 6K or six figures is always the driving force. Oh my gosh, when I get to six figures, then I'm successful. And we overshoot that we're successful at every level just by simply showing up, but that we can expedite it that much more by allowing ourselves to see the bigger vision of who we are in those bigger numbers, or the bigger level of service, which I think was also a key of what you said. The
Yeah,
service.
and there's so many people who even get to seven figures and still have this wobble every time they move past seven figures into multiple seven figures. So this wobble occurs at any level of business. So it's 100K is just the first big one, I guess, that people notice.
Yeah.
But yeah, once you go, like at 250,000, you're gonna have it at 500,000, you're gonna have it at 1 million, you're gonna have it, and so on. But that adjustment is, to me, it's not about goals, like new goals. It's about a vision and uncovering the vision that you have for your life instead of setting goals in a material plane. And goals, like, I don't know, I don't do goals. Like, I don't set goals. I go with like, what's the bigger picture? Like in my world, we look at soul design as in how you're made. We look at your soul expertise as in what is this unique superpower you brought in. And then we look at your soul mission as in what is the purpose of your presence, especially as a business owner in this specific thing, like whatever you're delivering as a coach or a healer or whatever you're doing. What is the purpose of that? That's a little bit different than like when people say like, oh, what's my life purpose? Like your life purpose is to be self-masterful, period. But when we're talking about from the business standpoint, then it's a little bit different. That's why I'm calling it a mission more than a purpose. It's like, what is because we're here as business owners to benefit society, to uplevel human collective consciousness somehow. Otherwise, you could go meditate in the woods alone and you will be contributing to energetics of the planet just fine. But if you want to be a business person, if you want to be in the world interacting with people and improving their lives somehow, you're here to somehow create impact, to contribute somehow. So that's kind of where the mission part comes from, is to look for what is your actual contribution. Not from like, oh, I help somebody design a website. That's not a contribution, that's a skill. Or I help somebody figure out like their emotional blocks and clear them. Okay, that's a skill. But what is your actual contribution in the larger scale? Because once you realize the vision, like my bigger vision, for example, is to empower people to step, especially women, to step into the queendom of themselves, to step into that higher level of themselves when they can command the room, command higher prices, command their life in a way that is gracious and at the same time super powerful and intentional.
Yeah.
Where emotional waves don't whack you every time they happen, where you're able to be masterful as you navigate through your life inside that inner power. Like I see myself kind of as the empress of my domain. So this is what I teach women. And that is the mission of my business and of everything I do. Even if I just talk to somebody sitting next to me in an airplane, that's what I naturally bring in as the energy. That is the mission of me being me. So when you understand what is this mission of your existence, like how are you benefiting human collective, now goals become more like little tools that fit into that. And from that standpoint, sure, you can always set some goals to get somewhere, because I mean, business got to have some calculations and stuff, but you got to have the bigger North Star. Otherwise, the whole thing becomes like just chasing after the next goal.
Yes, absolutely. It's such a good part of the conversation. How did you get started from where you were when you first realized you wanted to bring this kind of work into the world to where you are now? What was your journey?
I was born clairvoyant, which means I could see timelines and possibilities, and I never fell asleep. So as a little baby, I was fully conscious. I was just watching my parents and realizing like what's going on and try to help people already. By the time I was 2, I was doing it through drawing, and people clued in and they were like, oh, when I follow this thing that I think the drawing said, then my marriage is better, or my relationship changed, or my career happened. My boss listened to me. So they kind of realized that I'm a kid with some unusual ability. So by the time I was 14 years old, I already had practice and people coming to me and paying me money. So my business essentially started at 14. And then that's just, my life was always of service. If something, my journey was actually figuring out that at some point I had to include myself into that equation, because I kind of didn't till I was, well, almost 30 something. So I'm almost 50 now, but someone like 15 years ago is where it started to happen, that I burn out and I burn out again. And by the third time I burn out, I realized that, okay, I'm doing something off here, because I structured my business incorrectly. Even though I was serving people at the highest level, I was delivering amazing results. I was booked for a year ahead. Like there was no problem business wise. I was always making money in anything I was doing. But from the outside, it looked great, but on the inside, I was kind of like dying inside of that container I created. So I had to figure out, what is it that, like, how is it that I'm doing my mission? I'm in my expertise, I'm working with the right people. What is missing? And what was missing is the soul design respect. So I understood my design, but I kind of like ignored some of it because I was accommodating the audience I had. And that's where the shift had to happen for me, is that it was kind of funny, because that's what I was teaching my clients, like how to respect their design, right? And then I'm like, well, hell, I'm not doing that. So I had to actually readjust, and I walked away from things at the very high place. Like my business was, I had a tour company. We were traveling all over the world. We were bringing people to sacred sites. I was teaching in different, countries, in hotel rooms and just big events and stuff. And I had a lot of stuff going on, and I had to kind of close it all and go into just working on the phone with people for a year to kind of find me. because I was like, okay, do I just burn this like completely? Because I have enough money, I can just live for the rest of my life. But do I want to retire? No, not really, because I want to serve. So I had to try to figure that out. And that's where a lot of pieces came in about like, you're a conduit for wealth. The money is not just for you, it's meant to go through you so you can generate millions, and the millions are for projects you are involved in that are supporting community. So that's a good thing, because you happen to be the one that can generate money. So go do that, because that's how the money flows. And you're the one who can empower leaders. And that's where I realized high ticket is where I was missing that piece. I was serving the audience at the lower level that I was capable of, because I thought that that's just what I was supposed to do. So without changing my mission, I simply changed how I was packaging what I was doing. And that shifted everything, because now I work 1-2 days a week, and I'm at the million and past actually, and I am free. Like, I get to do whatever I want to do. If I don't want to do something, I literally can just not do it. I only work with people I want to work with.
Yeah.
There's a certain level of freedom that came with that. And that's what I'm teaching my clients as well, is that at the beginning, you don't have necessarily much room to be choosy. You just got to do what you got to do. And a lot of it is hard work. I know that it's nowadays very fashionable to say like ease and flow, and you just kind of like sit there and meditate and somehow magic happens. It's like, no, yes, you do. You meditate, you sit, you align. Yes, yes, yes. And there's a huge amount of freaking work involved. Yeah.
Yeah.
You literally like sleepless nights, or some email not working, or the link didn't attach. Like, there's a lot of stuff at the beginning that, I mean, you just don't know until you know. And the only way you know is by it working and then not working, and then you having to fix it. And that's how you know. But once all of that is behind you, and you kind of like, it's not an issue anymore, you know how to create an event, you know how something could stop working in the middle of thing, and you have enough of self-power to just carry through and somehow fix it and be okay without, huge disaster for yourself. All of that takes you to the place of like, okay, now I can start to have so much more ease. But that ease comes from, well, two things. One is, in my opinion, business strategy. So if you align your business correctly to your soul design, you're going to have more space because it's fitting you like a perfect tailored outfit. And two, from self-mastery. Because if you're not masterful, then everything that happens externally feels like it's happening to you. You're not in control of anything. And that's a place when internally we're not feeling safe. We're always, worrying if somebody's going to like us and all this messy stuff, that at some point you have to move beyond that. So self-mastery, it's kind of an essential piece. And just like you said earlier, entrepreneurship is highly confronting. You get to see all your shit very clearly laid out in front of you. There's no escaping. If you want to go to the next level, you got to deal. And that's actually a really beneficial thing for personal transformation, because at least anybody I work with, they very much, I would say, first interested in personal mastery and second in their business working. So we kind of in this to up level ourselves and then contribute to community, and business is the means through which we do it. And that is where you actually free yourself from all these binds of somebody else's expectations and programming, and you become somebody who creates your reality. Like, my methodology is called conscious future method, because I literally teach people how to create their future consciously, not just by, oops, it happened, or, I don't know why it happened, now how do I deal with it, or stoically, like I'm strong enough to handle anything, but how do you actually create what you want? And that starts with, who are you being? And if you are not masterful at who you're being, because every time something happens, it takes you right out of alignment, bad email, or you saw something on a feed in a Facebook group as you were, scrolling through, or somebody's comment, and suddenly you're all insecure or whatever. Well, that's lack of self-mastery. And that cannot be scaled. That cannot be grown past 6 figures, never mind further. So that internal work is a must to get anywhere. And then pairing it with the strategy that's aligned to your soul design, to your natural energetics. That's how you get the ease and flow that everybody wants.
I love that so much. There's so much similarity in the work that we do. I use numerology to help people come into context of their soul mission and their soul personality traits and their superpowers and all the things that we don't always see because we're so busy in life, right? And then we apply the self-mastery, and so the deeper teachings of the inner workings of who we're being. I love that you've taken that into this next layer of leadership, and that's where I see my business growing in the infancy of where it's been in the last few years into where it's going now, because it's everything in how we show up in our lives and how we're willing to step out of that comfort zone to accept ourselves in all those next levels, to be the conduit for wealth. I wrote that down as you were talking. So I'd love to go back just a little bit more about that as well, because I think a lot of people, even though, like, so if you're not relating to being that six-figure or above earner, and maybe you're below in that just a little bit in this audience, I know, you know, we have a mix of people listening in, being and allowing yourself to be the conduit for wealth, that you are the wealth activator because of everything that you said, beyond just, oh, I don't believe I can or can't have it, or do I believe I can have it, or because I want it. It doesn't always just happen. But when you create wealth for you and you allow yourself to receive more and land into that and be it, it allows someone else to do the same. And so as women, we can put wealth in the hands of women, they will move it out into the world. You know, I think humans have the capacity within all of themselves to do the same. But if we're never going to let ourselves allow ourselves beyond what we've known, we don't get the joy and the satisfaction and fulfillment of experiencing that, so we can amplify it even deeper. I'd love
Exactly.
I'd love to know, and you know, to let yourself take that and run with a little bit more, because you deal with so many more entrepreneurs from beginning to middle to even higher levels, and you're saying so many of the patterns stay the same.
Yeah.
That reminder has to come back around of being the conduit for wealth. Can you speak on that a little bit more?
Yeah, this is what I call wealth energetics. So when you shift into wealth energetics out of scarcity energetics, that's where everything begins to change in your perception of wealth. So what that means is, like, I gotta say a little bit kind of backwards here. So everything is a quantum field. Everything exists in a quantum field. There's anything you can imagine, good, bad, ugly, perfect, amazing, it is already. So if you think of it from that standpoint, like we're in this giant ocean of every molecule already has everything happened, then it's not about how do I get from here to somewhere by linear steps. It actually becomes nonlinear quantum creation, where you tune into the frequency of the thing that you want to have that already exists somewhere in the quantum field, and you match that frequency within yourself. When you start speaking to yourself from that place, you realize that there is no such thing as not abundance. That's actually the illusion that we've been living in. So the scarcity is sort of a human created concept. It's a construct that's meant to compartmentalize and minimize our power. So when you recognize that, then it's not really a question of, well, am I allowed to charge that much? Because, well, what's that much? There is no much. There is just a number. That number, like $10,000, you might think that's a lot. Somebody else can think it's nothing. It's just a number. So when you realize, oh, it's just a number, then the question, am I allowed to, shifts into, oh, well, what do I want to charge? Or let's say when you're bringing in something and you're worrying like, oh, will I ever have abundance? Well, can you not have abundance? Are you part of the universe? Yes. So universe is abundant, which means by definition you are. So that means if you're asking, can I have it? That means actually it's more like, can I stop myself from this separation that I'm putting myself in? So in the way I teach it, I call it expanding your wealth container. So your capacity to hold wealth must expand, because when we go for the higher goal, like let's say, I don't know, somebody has a program for 1,000, they're trying to sell it now for 5 and they can't, and it's a great program. Well, the issue would be, look at your capacity to hold wealth. If it's like a Chinese little teacup, then the universe can give you everything you're asking, and where is it gonna go? There is no space, which means it's either going to come in and immediately disappear, or it's going to come in and you're going to sabotage it, or somebody is going to not even show up to talk with you about this offer, not because there's something wrong with you or with the offer, or maybe even with the way you're saying it, but because the energetics, the capacity to hold wealth was too small. So expanding your wealth capacity means shifting into this universal understanding of the quantum dynamics and the oneness, I guess, of the wholeness of the universe that already is here, and us all being part of that. So from that standpoint, there is no separation. So you have divine right to have access to it all. Now, in a human sense, that means you got to do the inner work and external aligned action to make it happen, because we are in linear time. But in the non-linear time, in the expanded state, it is already here. It is already done. It's more about, am I allowing myself to align with what is already done for me and with me or not? Because universe is always giving us something. It's either giving you something that you want, or it's giving you something that you need to get to something that would get you to what you want. And if we start looking from that angle, so that you train yourself that there is no scarcity. No, it's not that, oh, I sent this email and I didn't get responses, so it didn't work. No, you send this email and now you understand what needs to be changed. And if you don't understand, well, then you have some market research to do, but you gain something by this thing that you think didn't work. Or you created an event and, I don't know, you wanted 20 people sign up, only 2 sign up. Again, you now got people on your list, so you now can market to them sort of differently. Maybe you can feel inspired and go do a live stream and somehow say just the right thing, but you gain something. So you always want to look as to what you gained, even in the situations where it looks like you didn't get what you wanted. Like, one of my personal rules is I always get what I came for, always, non-negotiable. So if I am disappointed or frustrated and it doesn't look like what I wanted, my job is to look for, how did I get what I wanted here? Because that's my rule. I always get what I wanted. That way you almost like, well, force is the wrong word, but like you make yourself stay in the abundance frequency.
Right.
And the more you do that, the more wealth can come to you.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. That reticular activation system in our brain, that little small RAS system, starts to find the likeness. It starts to seek more out of what we keep telling it. And so when we can look for the gain, it will go, oh, I know how to do that, but you've got to remind it and let it know that it's important to you. I think
That's
that
the self-mastery part.
I
That's actually a correct use of willpower. Most women use their willpower incorrectly. We use it as like push and force something into existence when it didn't happen naturally. And that's not a right use. The right use is internally to shift out of the scarcity situation, to shift out of something you know is not aligned, to just like, no, I'm not listening to that voice. Yeah, I hear you, but no,
yeah.
the more you're able to do that, that's where you're using your willpower correctly.
Well, and I hope people are listening to the golden nuggets that are being shared in this conversation. There's so much beautiful wisdom that you're sharing, and just how we can listen to ourselves and begin to switch that shift that switch, or flip that switch into something like somewhere in there to get to that
Right.
next level, which is so good. Because even when you're saying that, there's moments, I mean, I'm a huge observer of myself. I love self-mastery, and there's an endless pile of what we can learn about our own behaviors and beliefs. But like, the amount of how much we don't even accept the abundance that's already here as human beings, like if we're not willing to even see and accept that, why would the universe want to give us more? And so if you can think of that concept with wealth and our growth, where are you tripping your own self up with what you're believing to be true in this moment? And that's, nobody can share that with you. You know that. You know where you are in looking around. Is there an abundance around you, or is there lack? Right? Which
Yeah,
is so
and the
good.
personal space too, like if it's filled up with worry, with stress, with fear, with all this accommodating others, then you're full. So then there is no more room for
Right.
something to come to you. And when somebody's at that state and then they're like, but I gotta get this offer sold and I need to have like 5 more clients. This is chasing after. Anytime you chase after anything, you're not being the right person, the identity that already has the thing that you're trying to create. So anytime we're chasing after, we're in scarcity automatically. So shifting out of that into abundance means that you catch yourself at the moments where, like, do I even have the room for what I want? So let's say I want 3 more clients. Right now, they're not here.
Right.
So am I doing the correct aligned action? Because if you're just sitting there and hoping, well, that might be part of it. is your offer good market positioning and messaging? Like is that packaging part done? Because if that's not done, well, maybe you need to do more market research. Okay. And then if those two are done, you're doing the correct work and everything is packaged right, do you have enough space? Do you actually want what you think you want? Because I remember I had a client who came to me with like, okay, I have this group program and I need to have 24 people, like blah, blah, blah. And then there's only 3 people that sign up and what's wrong? And it's the first thing I saw, it's like, oh my God, you're exhausted. You don't want 24 people. Your mind does, but your body does not. So we either need to clean up what's going on in your body so you can have 24 people, or you need to figure out something else. And she actually realized that she doesn't want 24 people in her energy field. She'd rather have 3 higher end people. So we shifted the program. We adjusted it for a much more customized version. We lifted the price. I think it was like 30,000 or something instead of 3 that she was charging. So we shifted that and she had 3 people. And it was exactly the amount of money she would have made the other way, but her wealth container was expanded for that. So sometimes it's actually adjusting what matches your design, because some people want to have larger communities, some don't. Some prefer to have, I don't know, 10 clients at 100K to get to 1 million. So there's a different way at how you are, but that also means that you need to be able to be the masterful identity that can hold a contract for 100K and not feel all this wobble about who am I to, or is this enough, or, let me give you everything and my firstborn practically because now, you're paying me this money and all that stuff. So there's like an internal work that's involved in up leveling to higher pricing, but if that is something that's naturally your way, then that's better than trying to fit yourself into some cookie cutter thing that you see other people doing and then wondering why it's not working. There's nothing wrong with you. It's more like you're a one-time cosmic event. So you already here uniquely as you. Now, if you know your design, if you know how you're built and what is your superpower and you know what's your mission, and now you trust that, with that and aligned action, of course, that's how you get much more of that ease and flow to expand your wealth capacity and have wealth by soul design, which is actually the name of my book.
Yes, I love that so much. So good. Well, can you tell us, I always ask this question in my podcast. My podcast is purpose, presence, and prosperity. And I love those words. In your journey, in your definition of that, what would you offer as your vision for having that purpose, presence, and prosperity in your life?
Well, purpose to me is the vision. Presence to me is identity of the future you that you're becoming now. And prosperity, it's wealth by soul design. So that's kind of the combination of the same things that we were just talking about. And in my life, that's what I've been living. And because of it, I was always able to generate income. And that's actually how I started working with entrepreneurs, is because I was confused as to why so many amazing spiritually conscious women couldn't seem to figure out how to make money doing the thing that they're doing when I always could. And it's like, they still like, should I take another class? Should I do this? Get another certification? It's like, you're already a master. Stop. What you're lacking is like marketing and packaging and like business skills. So that's the part that I think when we unite that, we get these 3 pieces. The prosperity kind of comes from being an aligned presence and living on purpose.
So good. So you have a gift for the audience. Do you want to talk about that and where can people find you? Let them know.
Yeah. My name, Eugenia Oganova, that's my handle pretty much on any network. So on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook. I also have free Facebook group. So High Ticket Clients Energetics. If you check that out, I post a lot of really good stuff in there. My website is also my name, Eugenia Oganova. So check it out. What you're going to find are practical, tangible things for your material part of the business, the linear strategies, and the energetic strategies external. So everything that I put out is not just kind of like, fluffy stuff. It's like really to the point, effective. If you apply, it works. And my methodology works. And this is how like people in my world, maybe not even my clients, but they're just like in my free content, they constantly messaging me with like, oh, I applied this and it actually worked, or I signed the client, or like, I can't believe that this works, because it does. So what I want to offer you is I have a mini series, which is like teeny little videos that explain this thing that I'm talking about. So you can understand how is it that you can First of all, attract clients to you versus chase after them. Second, how can you attract high ticket clients, people who pay you 10,000, 15,000, 30,000? Like the typical question, where do I find these high ticket clients? All of that is answered in there. And in a soul aligned way, how can I expand my capacity to hold wealth in a way that actually brings me the lifestyle that I want and creates ease in my business, so that there is a pathway, I guess, for how I can transition from the hustle into a sustainable, spacious flow in my business. So that series is expandyourwealthcapacity.com. So if you go there, it's free. You get to watch it and understand so much more. Implement it right now if you want to, and it will help you. And of course, if you want more support from me personally, I'm definitely available to do that with you. Also, my book, Wealth by Soul Design, it's an international bestseller. It just came out, and it lays out my methodology and these little rules as well that I was mentioning here. Like, I always get what I came for, and it is already done. And there's lots of things like that that are little mindset hacks, you can think, but I kind of look at it more like it's energetic hacks, because it actually clicks you into alignment. So just for that itself, it's like gold, because if you can apply that onto your business, you become the next level you already, which then shifts you to where you want to be. So that is wealthbysouldesign.com. And the mini series is expandyourwealthcapacity.com.
I love it. We'll have all the links and information in the show notes so people can find exactly what you're talking about. I cannot wait for not only the audience to dive in, but myself. I'm going to go find out even more and to take myself to that next level, which I love so much. I can't thank you enough for being with us today and sharing all of your wisdom and your beautiful energy with the audience. Thank you so much for being here. Are there any last nuggets you'd want to share with the audience before we say goodbye?
If you envision it, it's meant to be, because you could not envision it out of quantum field. You cannot desire it. You cannot kind of see it and feel it in your body if it didn't exist for you. So if you have some crazy vision out there and you maybe think like, whoa, that's too far, like whatever, it's possible for you. And it's possible for you in this lifetime. And it's possible for you now if you start living more as the person who already has that vision in her life.
Love it. Thank you so much. And thank you guys again for tuning in. We'll see you again next week for our next episode. Until then, bye for now.